Welcome to the Drummers Debate podcast. Today I'm with Josh Salant from Salant Sound Studios.
Hey.
And I'm Phil Lherisson from Transcendent Audio Productions. And today we're going to be talking about what makes a good drummer. Josh, what do you think makes a good drummer?
I think, being a good drummer is a very subjective thing. And I think being a good drummer in your band and having technical chops are kind of two separate entities, My favorite drummers are the ones that are just really good drummers in their band who make parts that make sense and find the perfect parts. No matter how simple or how complicated, if it works with the band and it just makes the band sound really, really good, then that's it. They're an awesome drummer. Meg White, she's an awesome drummer.
Meg White from the White Stripes?
Yeah, she plays stupid simple. Floor tom and snare.
But would you consider her good because anybody could do her job? Would you say anybody could do her job? Like if she was playing, what is that song? Seven Nation Army. Seven Nation Army, which is do. Yeah. Would you still consider her good because she's playing that simple beat?
I think so, because you know what it comes down to? It's she wrote that part. If I was sitting at that kit, I would probably start out too complicated and almost ruin it, She's using her limitations. I'm not saying that she's a limited drummer, because she could probably play great chops, but she's using her gut instinct playing to make a perfect part. We'd probably go kick, snare, hat, right? Everything, three limbs. She's like, nah, I'm going to use one limb.
One limb, quarter notes.
Just kick.
Just the kick and the floor tom.
Yeah.
And I think it's great, too, because she shows that you don't have to be super technical to be in a band or super technical to be a good drummer.
And look at Ringo, man. Ringo gets a lot of crap. People always say, he's so simple compared to the other guys, and they're just, they're geniuses. And I think that he was great because he really wrote some cool parts, like kick and hat patterns, to gat, cuckoo, gat, little triplet things that aren't so handsy. They're more just groovy.
I agree. I think one thing that makes a drummer really good is keeping the band in time. It's very, very important.
Yeah.
In that sense, I believe that a drummer is one of the leaders in the band, if they're playing live and they're not playing to a click and they are the time, they are the leader of the band. I mean, do you think that's correct, or would you say not? Because everybody follows the drummer. The drummer's job is to keep the band in time.
Yeah. I mean, we've all played gigs where the monitors aren't working and you can't hear anything. And I don't know if you rely on vocal cues and stuff. I rely on vocal cues all the time, but sometimes you can't hear it, so you're just going, I hope that they're following me, and I'm just going to keep this rock solid.
They are following. They have no choice. They have to.
Yeah, totally.
They're listening to the drums to be on the part of the song.
Totally.
Well, I mean, in my experiences, if I sped up, which I'm very guilty of doing in the past, speeding up tremendously, because, when you're in a live situation, adrenaline gets you, all these different things.
It's a very natural thing.
Yeah, it's a very natural thing.
And I think that, there's guys, there's always that debate whether or not you go out with a click or not. Some guys, if they're playing the samples and loops where they have to be dead nuts on the click, then they have to play to a click. But I think that most rock and roll situations or most music situations rely a constant meter with human deviation.
I agree. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be a machine.
There has to be. There's so many people who come down to the studio and they're playing to a click and they're playing as a band. And if the chorus is rushing, but the band is together, and then for the verse they come back down and it's a very gradual, natural thing, then I'm not gonna have them redo the chorus because it's not on the grid. Who cares?
Right. The band is together.
The band's together. They're speeding up for a reason.
They're in unison.
And they're speeding up because the part calls for it. Sometimes the part dictates, slight deviation, not crazy jumps, but sometimes you get more excited in the chorus. That excitement that you feel as a drummer, that will actually come across in the music. People will be more excited. They won't know why. They won't know, wow, this is speeding up by point so-and-so, BPM. But They'll be like, oh, yeah, the chorus has energy. what is that energy? A little nervous energy, a little speed up. Who cares?
I agree, and it's the natural human nature to speed up at certain parts. But some people, guitarists, bassists, may disagree with you. They may say that they want a song a specific tempo, and if you become faster, they'll tell you to slow it down. Or if you become too excited and you become faster, they might look at you and tell you to slow down.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that because when I first started performing, I was like so fast. Like I would literally go 30 BPM more than the actual song.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think there's a level of how fast you're going. Like if you're just a little off, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're a lot off, you may cause the feeling of the song to be completely different.
And there's also that really important concept of there's three ways to play in the click, right? There's dead onto the beat where if you're practicing, you don't hear the click because you're so on. And then there's right behind, which is totally acceptable for funk, rock, groovy stuff. And there's right ahead, good for punk, where you have to push a little bit. Like all three are acceptable tempos, and they're all on the click. I think that as drummers we have to decide what the song calls for. Sometimes you need that laid back thing. Like I think like Nick Mason from Pink Floyd, and so many other drummers, but him in particular for me is one of my favorites because he like hits the snare at like the last possible second. It's like that super late, bah, and it just makes it just brings everything. It makes everything so much bigger.
It's an articulate hit. It's not like something super off. It's articulate. It's meant to be there.
It's articulate, and it's like just at the last second. It's not bah, bah. It's bah, bah. It's like that little 30-second note deviation of like. Now it's right behind the beat, and it makes everything sound fatter. It's like a timing thing.
One other thing that I think makes a good drummer is the ability to stay in the pocket.
Yeah.
Now, one of my favorite drummers is Dennis Chambers.
Oh.
He's the guy that got me into drums. Straight from high school, I seen his videos. I was like, that guy is amazing. Because not only could he keep a beat, but while he's keeping the beat, he's putting little articulate things underneath while keeping the same beat, like little ghost notes, little tom hits, maybe little crescendos on the cymbals or whatever it may be. And that's what really made me attracted to playing the drums, because I can just go like a simple beat like boom, ga, boom, but I'm still adding that little ghost note like boom, ga, tika, boom, ga, like just little things like that.
Yeah.
I think adds to the growth of a drummer, or maybe that's more of an opinionated thing, but that's what I like when I see a drummer. I would never look at a drummer and say just because they're playing a basic beat that they don't have the ability to do that. Maybe they're playing for the song, which is very important too. You don't want to overplay. You want to play specifically for the song, because overplaying is just not going to cut it. It's just not going to sound right.
I'm the same way with playing ghost notes and stuff. But have you ever listened? I've listened to like a lot of 70s rock lately, and like you listen to these drummers. First of all, they're super creative. They don't always hit the snare on the 2. They'll hit it on the 2 and the 2E. They'll do like weird things, and like when you listen, if you listen to the song, you don't realize, you think it's a simple beat. As you break it down, you're like, oh, whoa, these guys are creative.
Yeah, super creative.
But have you ever, like, especially with those kind of things, they don't use a lot of ghost notes. And you know what? Sometimes, like, I find ghost notes for me as being like kind of like a crutch. They kind of like fill in the space. But sometimes if you play without ghost notes and you're just playing straight and you try to keep that going, it's discipline, right? Like you really have to be disciplined to keep a straight beat for 8 bars without a fill.
Oh yeah, definitely.
16 bars without a fill. And it makes that one fill you do, let's say going into a chorus or something, it makes that fill even bigger. So just by comparison, you got this like super straight beat that feels rock solid without ghost notes. And then you have a fill or something with a ghost note, and the listener goes, "Whoa, what was that?" Like, it's like it's like
that completely changes the whole vibe for the song.
Yeah.
I've seen drummers
one fill,
just one fill at the perfect time. I've seen drummers play a basic beat, but instead of using ghost notes or little crescendos or little things to accent the guitar or whatever, they're playing a basic beat, but they're using different dynamics on each hit, which completely changes the part.
I think that's so important.
It's very important. So I would hear like a basic beat, boom, ga, boom, ga, boom, ga, boom, and it would just like change from measure to measure. Like one bass drum hit will be soft, and the other bass drum hit will be hard. Same thing with the hi-hat, same thing with the snare, and that completely changes the whole vibe for the part, which is also something that I believe a good drummer should have, a good sense of dynamics.
Now, as engineers, right, sometimes we lose, sometimes if the guy doesn't hit the snare the same or hits the kick the same, we add compression because we want to make things even, because we don't want to lose that hit, right? So sometimes, so now that lends itself to the conversation of the trade-off, right, between do you want to have a lot of dynamics? Do you want to have less dynamics? You know, like if you listen to a lot of rock stuff, if things aren't compressed, it actually weakens it. It's like boom, ga, boom, ga, boom, ga. Like the tones fall apart, right? So sometimes you add a little compression so the levels are even, the tones a little even. Maybe you get a little more room filling in that like strange deviation. So like, I guess if you're recording like a jazz guy or like a funk guy, maybe you'll use less compression.
Exactly.
No compression,
I was gonna say that.
You don't want to ruin him. Mm-hmm. So we always have to
they're
make
super
the decision.
dynamic. You're not always at the same volume. The volume is fluctuating so much.
Well, that's why people use a lot of parallel compression, because you have the uncompressed, kick and snare with the guy's natural dynamics, and then you have the compressed version. So even if he's playing a little softer, you always have the compressed one to kind of fill in the gap. So it's like there's still a solid foundation of rock behind it, you know.
I think it depends on the music and the drummer, because there are certain drummers that don't need compression because every hit is literally the same hit.
Yeah.
And there's drummers that always hit the snare in a different place.
Yeah.
Which is also very frustrating because depending on what the music calls for, you might have to trigger that snare.
Yeah.
But I believe that back in the day, the way engineers recorded was much better because you had more of an emotion to the song. So not everything now is super compressed. Like the industry standard is you have to be at 0 dB. 0 dB.
Compressed triggers.
Exactly.
Everybody
Compressed
sounds the
triggers.
same.
Everybody sounds the same, but there is no emotion unless you're listening to like a fusion record or a jazz record. Even now, I mean, some guys are still using that technique, but all the rock stuff is all the same. I mean, certain bands, they use different dynamics, like Tool. Maybe they'll be soft some parts, but that's a tricky situation to use compression for, because depending on the part, you might have to do layering compression and then take that compression off and then put the drums on a different track to have it lowered.
Yeah, it's more work. But like if you think about like, you know, the word tight as a drummer, right? Like the word the concept of tight has changed over time. Like Black Sabbath, they were tight in the 70s. You listen to them now, they're pretty loose. But that looseness gives it its awesome Sabbath quality. You compare like Sabbath to like a modern metal band or a metalcore band, and like these guys aren't tight. The metalcore band is like,
I don't think Sabbath played to a click. I think they recorded straight.
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
But like the concept of tight has changed. Like in the 70s, if you listen to that, this band's really, really tight. But you compare it now to like modern snap to grid records, you know, where everything is just kind of, the life has been sucked out of it. You know, it's like it's not nearly as tight. So I think a lot of people are going back to like a roots rock kind of vibe where, I mean, they can play to a click or not, but like they want to try to capture the emotion, you know.
Yeah, I think we completely went into recording.
Oh yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard.
I know we're engineers, but let's just
really
stay on
hard.
the topic.
It's really hard.
I know. I could talk about recording.
See,
for
they go
days.
hand in hand to me.
Exactly. I know. Me too.
I can't separate them.
Me too.
But you know what? That is true, because as drummers, especially as drummers who have to record, you know, all drummers, you know, any drummer that's a recording artist, these go hand in hand, and they always think about these things because their playing has to come across well in the studio. And they got to think about dynamics, and they got to think, well, is this engineer going to gate everything? Is he going to compress everything? You know, should I hit really hard? Should I hit really soft? Should I be dynamic in my playing? So, like, these are all concepts that we have to talk about. Like, they go hand in hand for a modern drummer, right?
Right, I agree. Now, let's say you were a guitarist, which you do play in bass. Now, you had to pick between two drummers. One drummer, super solid. He could play to the click. He could lead the band, and he has a very solid groove, but he has no chops. And then you got a guy that can play to a click, but is a little bit off, and he's the type of guy to put fills in every available opportunity he gets. So he has the chops, but he doesn't have the time. And you got a guy that has the time but doesn't have the chops. Who are you choosing?
Pocket.
I agree.
I try to be the pocket guy. It's hard, you know. I don't know if you find yourself wandering. Your mind wanders when you play. I try to always be focused, you know, but sometimes it's hard, you know, and you start thinking about other things, and you start wanting to express yourself, because you know when you're playing something super straight, it's hard to express yourself. You know, it's like you're going poof, ga, poof, ga. You're just like stay consistent, kick, snare, you know, same volume, you know, keep it super even, you know, but then you want to go like, oh, let me just add a little ghost note here, or let me just like do like the hats a little quieter and accents, and
right.
So it's like it's hard to choose sometimes, and sometimes your mind wanders and you're like, oh, oops, you know. So I find like the guy that can really just do the consistent thing for 3 minutes or 4 minutes for a song, 5 minutes for a song, like those guys are like really pro drummers. I mean,
but to the average person, they don't think that way.
it's true.
So
It's true.
us
We're in our
as
own
drummers,
heads.
you know, us as drummers, we know what makes a good drummer. But people from the outside looking in, they just see chops, man. They just see crazy fast fills. They see a bunch of drums being hit in different patterns at the same time, and they're like, "Wow, I'm guilty of it because that's how I got into drumming." But
Yeah.
as I got into
it's
drumming,
fun.
yeah, of
It's
course, 'cause
exciting.
it's fun. It's fun to see. It's exciting. But the fundamentals of playing drums is to be in the pocket and play the groove. You have to have groove. If you don't have groove, then you can't play in a band.
It's true.
Now, like let's say we have two different type of drummers again, different scenarios. One drummer is only able to play super heavy, right? So he's a super loud drummer, and he can't control his dynamics because he's used to playing in metal bands all the time. And he hits super heavy, and even when he tries to hit loud, even when he tries to hit light, because he's using heavy sticks, it's still super loud, so you can't call for any soft parts. And then you have a guy that can dynamically hit soft and raise volume. Now, he might not be as powerful as the heavy, hard-hitting drummer, but this guy can hit from like low to medium. Now, which guy are you choosing?
You know, I find like those two guys both have their place in the world, right? Personally, I like the dynamic guy. I like the finesse guy. But in a recording situation, if I had a choice of recording them, sometimes, okay, I recorded this kind of famous drummer, John Macaluso, J-Mac. He played with TNT, he played with Yngwie, he played with Symphony X. He plays in a bunch of bands. He lives out in Italy. He's a really great guy, really nice guy. He's from you know, I think he's from Long Island or from Brooklyn or whatever. But I was getting this great snare sound one day, and I'm like looking at the settings, and I'm like, oh man, like, and then like it just sounded great, and I was like, what's the difference? And I go out to the live room, and there's a big dip in the snare head because he was just hitting it so hard, and he was really pulling the tone from the drum. He was making the whole room resonate with this snare sound. You know, it was like, and you know, as engineers, it makes our job in one way easier because we don't have to make it sound big. It's instantly big. So he was, I mean, you know, he's a drummer that has plenty of finesse, but for that track, he kind of, you know, I guess the best drummer, and to make a long story short, the best drummer is a guy who could turn that off and on.
Right.
You know, a guy that can be the finesse guy, but be like, okay, what do we need? We need just, you know, clubs for hands and feet. Got it.
And as recording engineers, that is very easy to mix if everybody's on. If the drummer's always on the same dynamic, you really don't have to tweak anything after the first mix because everything stays the same.
A powerful rim shot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that backbeat makes people move, and like if people move, as opposed to like guy playing timid and stuff. I mean, I like all kinds of music. I know you do too, and like I've been listening to like a lot of jazz guys lately, and they're very dynamic and they're just so good. But then like I'll listen on the radio and then I'll flip to like my classic rock station and I'll just hear like Phil Rudd just from AC/DC just, and you're like, sonically, it sounds so much better. And it just rocks so much harder because he's just hitting it so hard.
I think so. I think that in that situation, it depends on the genre.
Yeah.
So if it's rock, if it's any type of rock where there's a very hard hitting part, it's going to be tough for that guy that only could play low medium dynamics to keep up with the band to actually convey that energy and that emotion for that part. So if I was a jazz guy and I'm playing jazz fusion, or I'm playing like drum and bass, or maybe country, or many genres could fulfill that low to medium dynamic with no problems. But I don't think being in like a metalcore band is gonna cut it for that guy. So it depends to me on the genre that's called for that type of drummer.
Yeah. I saw this band the other day and they had the quietest rhythm section, and I was blown away. I mean, the drummer. I mean, he was and he wasn't playing timid. He wasn't like he was playing quiet, but he was just nailing all the parts. And even though it didn't have a big sound, because it didn't, it's hard to pull tone out of something when you're hitting it lightly. Sometimes it'll resonate, sometimes it won't. But it was about the finesse and the volume and him working so well in the band that it just blew my mind. I mean, he was doing stuff like instead of hitting the hi-hat cymbals, he'd hit the rod of the hats, just because it was quieter.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was like it's a simple concept, It's like what I call like playing like a lateral fill, where you play the same stickings, but you'll just play it on different drums because it'll sound different. Like if you do a paradiddle on the snare, and then if you play it on the ride, it creates like a groove. Down, it's lateral. So him playing it on the rod of the hi-hat, it like was a great sonic choice, man. And it's weird. It's like a click, but it's like cool.
That's awesome.
I guess those are the best drummers, the ones that can really write parts and really do the job creatively.
Play for the music.
And it's hard to take ourselves out of the equation,
Yeah, I mean, I was very guilty. I'm not going to lie. When I was coming up, it was all about just fitting as much crap as I could possibly fit in that part. If there was a fill, I was like, okay, this has to be as complex as I could possibly make it to show off my skills. And that's not the case. You want to play to the song.
I've always been the opposite, but it's been more of like a less about like not playing the fills, just more of being consistent. Like, if you go on the road sometimes you don't feel that great. Sometimes you just haven't been eating that great, or you haven't been sleeping, or you've been driving a lot. So I always write parts that are like 50 or 60% of my skill level. So if I'm not feeling 100%, I still have that 40%, of like wiggle room to play. If I'm feeling sick, I have a really bad headache, I'm still playing at 50 or 60%. It's okay. I have the room,
Right.
As opposed to writing stuff where you're like at like your best shape, and then when you're feeling sick and you're just fumbling and messing up. So I write parts that like if I'm half asleep, or if I'm not feeling good, or maybe I had a few beers, or whatever. I feel like I write parts that I can always play consistently, no matter how I'm feeling.
I agree.
It's kind of like a little built-in padding.
For me,
I don't know if that makes sense.
For me, it depends on the genre. I've always played progressive metal throughout my career playing drums, and I've always tried to make the part as cool as possible because I listen to bands like Animals as Leaders.
Oh yeah, so cool.
Matt Garska is one of my favorite drummers right now. But when I was growing up, I used to buy Modern Drummer DVDs all the time.
Oh yeah, I love those.
The Modern Drummer Festival DVDs. And
those are great shows.
Yeah, those are great. So Chad Smith was on one of them.
He's like number one for me.
I mean, not for me, but
yeah.
Chad Smith is
he's
very
like top,
solid
he's like top
drummer.
3.
Okay, so you like those type of
yeah.
drummers. So in this festival, he got up on stage and you expected him to do a solo.
Yeah.
For 8 straight minutes, he's just like, boom, got, boom, boom, got, boom. The same beat. He stops for a second, boom, goes right back into it.
Now that can be really boring, right?
It is boring, but he wanted to prove a point. He wanted to prove that, you know, all the drummers here are here to show off their skills. But what you need to get the gig, or what you need to excel in that musical part, is to play for the song. And fundamentally, you need that groove. So that was a big lesson. And even though it was boring, because everybody's like doing all these crazy tricks and hitting drums in all these crazy patterns, he proved the point. He was the only guy to ever do that on a Modern Drummer Festival, and I respected it like crazy. And it was like, I don't know if people were getting bored, but like 5 minutes into him playing the beat, people started clapping. Like, he was just playing a basic beat, like, boom, got. You should check it out. I have it.
Were they
I'll show
clapping
you.
with him, or they're clapping to get him off?
I don't know if they were clapping with him or to get him off. They were like, what the hell? This is a festival. I want to see some solos. Like,
you know
usually,
what?
if you go to a festival, you want to see your favorite drummers do, like, their signature chops or what they're known for, regardless if it's double bass, if it's some snare rolls, whatever it is. But he's the only guy that I've ever seen play a basic beat at a drummer festival. And I thought it was super impressive.
Yeah.
Because it was...
He did prove his point.
He proved his point. He was like, you have to play for the music, and the drummer's job is to keep the groove. You got to have a solid foundation. That solid foundation is that groove.
Yeah, now, like, if you think about some of the best session drummers in the world, you know, Steve Gadd and Bernard Purdy and Greg Bissonette and now Kenny Aronoff, he plays with everybody, you know. It's like, those guys are pocket guys. You know, those guys they have amazing chops, and they can chop. I think the best guys are the ones that do both. Like Steve Gadd, he's like a super pocket guy.
Yeah, he's a
right.
He's not just a pocket guy.
Yeah, he's a pocket guy.
He has like these super chops too.
He's a pocket guy with chops that he can add his chops with the ghost notes, and he can add his flavor to a simple beat. I mean, one of the most famous beats ever is his 50 Ways to Leave a Lover. 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. And it's like, basically, it was an exercise. It was a drum cadence that he did when he was playing in marching bands, and
the paradiddles on the snare and the hi-hat.
Yeah, and Paul Simon came and he goes, "I want that." And he goes like, "This is my warm up, but okay." So he played it. So now he's got to think of ways. How am I going to make this interesting? So what is he going to do? He plays things laterally. Like he's like, I'm not gonna play in the snare. I'm gonna play in the hat. I'm gonna do the floor tom. I'm gonna do a big floor tom on the one, or wherever it is. I'm not really sure, but
now,
you know,
don't get me wrong. I love Chad Smith and all, but I'm not going to a Modern Drummer Festival to see 6 Chad Smiths go back to back playing.
Of course,
you know, basic beats. You know,
you want to show.
Yeah, you want to show. You want to see those chops also, but I just wanted to make a point that you don't need chops to be a good drummer.
And you know what it is too? It's like, I don't know about you, but I'm not one of those guys that can sit behind the kit and play a solo and impress people. I'm a band drummer. I need the band. I'm a guy that, I mean, I could do my fills and stuff, whatever, but like, that's not my MO. I'm one of those guys that like, the band's playing and I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna make my part work. I'm focusing on the parts. There's guys who can just like sit behind a kit and they'll just start chopping and you'll be like, whoa! Like they can impress people. They're just amazing musicians and they can do it themselves. They could be a solo man. You know, I can like some people, they ask me like, hey, you know, can you play a drum solo? And I'm just like, without any music. I'll try. Like, you know, I think there's some guys who can just do it. Go,
yeah, that's me. Like,
you know, like
for a long
compose.
time, that's what I would do. I would just for fun, you know, just to be behind the kit and just chop around, you know, because that's what got me into drumming.
Yeah.
Luckily, I have the groove too, but
yeah, of course.
I love chopping it up, and I love seeing other people chop it up.
It's fun, man. And you know what? I think all drummers have to, you know, we all compose, right? We're always composing. You know, if our band brings us stuff, we go, okay, what's going to be the best parts to play? And how do I play this? Am I going to play quarter notes on the hat, eighth notes on the hat? Am I going to play the hat or play the bell of the ride? Like, you know, we're always composing. How are we going to throw the listener into the chorus? How are we gonna make this pre-chorus? How are we gonna make this build, really build? We think about dynamics. We think about what we're gonna hit. All that stuff. So we're always composing. I think that, people who do drum solos, they've taken the composition to a next level where they're composing pieces without the band.
And some of them don't even compose; they just freestyle. Most of them,
Yeah.
I think, freestyle. Honestly,
I mean, some of the best drummers I've ever met are some drummers who play gospel, and they don't even have drum kits.
gospel chops.
They don't have drum kits, gospel chops.
Yeah.
They've been playing since
The
they
bucket
were 2.
guys in the subway.
Yeah, they've been playing since they were 2 years old. They play in
Yeah.
church, and they don't have drums at home, and they sit behind a kit and they do sessions, and I go, wow, how are you nailing this? And they go, it's like I think it has to be. It's the same thing with anything else. It's passion, it's skill, it's talent. It's how much heart you're gonna put, how much work you're gonna put into. I mean, there's guys who sit there and they study rudiments, and they go nuts. I call them like those drummers are like the drummers who do like
The
all
technicians.
the technicians and
Yeah.
the clinicians, like the guys who go like, oh, what I'm doing here is I'm doing a right, left, right, and they have everything down to like a technical science, and those guys are great. I mean, I'm not one of those guys. I wish I was.
That's me. I love like technical science.
Yeah, to break it down, like break down what you're playing. Like sometimes I'm playing stuff and people are like, oh yeah, cool man, what are you playing there? I'm like, this. Like I can't explain it. Well, what I'm doing is I'm doing a 6-stroke roll here, and on the hi hats I'm playing. Like there's guys who really break it down. I mean, I don't know if you watch some of the videos on Drumeo.
Oh, I love drumming.
But like it's amazing. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
because you see some of your favorite drummers who you think are just pure rockers.
the variety.
And they'll sit down and they'll be like, okay, so what I'm doing is I'm doing a 5-stroke roll here, and then we're gonna go into pata fla fla, and they're just breaking out these like crazy rudiments, and you're like, wow, there's a lot of thinking behind this stuff. It's not just gut, it's not just heart, it's brain, a lot of brain. It's brainy drummers,
Yeah, especially the drummers that could make each limb do a different time signature. That's like independence on each
Four-way
individual hand.
independence.
That's crazy.
I mean, there's guys who make whole careers out of that.
The Latin drummers that play cowbell with their left foot while they're hitting a completely different time signature with their bass drum.
And the samba guys.
Yeah,
the
it's
Brazilian
ridiculous.
guys.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, they're just. I feel like that stuff, even though it's possible to learn, but I feel like you really have to like grow up in it. You have to. I mean, I can't ever be like a serious Latin drummer.
Yeah, you have to love the style.
And you have to really like grow up in it. Like it's almost like an innate thing. I remember I had this experience when I went to LA. I was in Sam Ash in LA, and I was just jamming around the kits, and like people were coming up to me and they were going like, you play different, like they liked it because it was just a different sound. It's an East Coast New York sound, it's like the LA guys sound different, their fills are different. It's almost like a nature versus nurture thing, and it's almost like, we're influenced. Being in New York, we listen. We have hip hop all around us. We have funk
definitely.
all around us.
Like the Berkeley guys, they say the Berkeley guys are engineered to sound the same because they study the same stuff.
And it's like
they all have the same chops.
It's like, what? That's like the language of drumming. Like I don't know if you ever watch what's his name, Benny Greb. He talks about like you learn like drum vocabulary. You learn these fills, that like make these like sentences and words that become part of your sound. It's not even like a technical thing. It's like a you just learn how to speak your own way. So I find like probably those guys are studying the same things, but their journey, their lifelong journey as being a musician and being a drummer is probably vastly different.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, just like inherently, you're gonna listen to different things. You come from a different place. I had the pleasure of seeing this drummer from Philly one time, and I was watching him play, and I go like, I wouldn't do anything he's doing. No, not that he was playing bad, because he was playing great. I wouldn't be able to think of the things that he's doing. Like I wouldn't. That's not my gut instinct to do. And like that's why I don't know if you learn like anybody's parts, if you got to if you do like a fill-in gig and you got to learn some drummer's parts. I love doing that. It's hard work, because you gotta work hard to sound like them. But like you get into their brain and you go like, wow, like they're doing that like snare on 3 and they're like doing like something like a little weird like that you wouldn't think about. It's like, isn't that like amazing how every musician has their own way of thinking and we get to just kind of tap into it selectively whenever we want.
Right. So let's review what we think makes a good drummer. Not in any particular order. So 1, playing for the song. Not overplaying.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Absolutely.
All right. Keeping the band in time.
Absolutely.
And dynamics.
Dynamics. And if I had to add one, I'd say originality.
Originality.
Yeah. I just give one little example. Like
Yeah, I mean,
like Charlie Watts. He doesn't hit the hi-hat and the snare at the same time.
Right.
He goes boo boo ga, boo boo ga, boo boo ga.
but that doesn't have to be specific. You don't need to be original to be a
Oh
good
yeah.
drummer.
Yeah, you don't.
So I wouldn't
it's more
put that
fun
on the
that
list.
way, isn't
It's
it?
more fun to be original, definitely, but you don't need to be original to be a good drummer, to get the gig, or to be in a band, or to keep up with the rest of the musicians. Even if you've been playing drums for a year and you're playing with a guitarist that's been playing for 10 years, and you don't have to be original or have chops. You just need to be dynamic, keep the tempo, and play for the song.
Yeah. Now, I have one thing for you, one question for you.
Sure.
Do you like the drummer that has the straight face throughout the whole gig?
See, I'm the guy.
Or do you like the drummer?
I'm the ugly face guy, man.
Or do you like the drummer that is a little bit of the showman?
No. What do you mean by face? Because like when you say face, I'm very expressive.
I know drummers who just do this the whole gig.
Yeah, they're very straight.
Like this.
No.
And they do they're doing
No.
they're doing great chops. But like I'm like kind of the opposite. I do simple stuff, but I emote, you know, like the playing, like when I'm hitting the floor time, I'm doing a build, I'm gonna go.
Right.
You know,
right.
I'm
Me
gonna
too.
like make
Same thing.
Because for me it's not an act. I mean, it's a performance. It's a real way I'm feeling. I can't turn it off.
Right. But some drummers don't have that emotion. They're just like, I guess, not emotionless, but maybe just training themselves to be as stiff as possible.
Yeah.
One thing I've learned, one thing that somebody told me was that back in 2006 when I did the Guitar Center drum off.
Oh yeah, those are great.
Yeah, I won first place.
Whoa.
But in just the one.
In Queens.
Yeah, no, it was in Long Island by Carl Place.
Oh yeah.
So I won the first round, and then I tried to get to the second round, and it sucked because I was in a car accident, whatever.
Oh wow.
But
those things have opened a lot of doors for drummers.
Oh
man.
yeah, definitely.
You know.
So the judge, one of the biggest judges there, I forgot. He was a teacher for a big music school in New York. I forgot the name of the school, but he said, "I love watching you play because you really show emotions behind the drums. Those faces you make really show me that you love what you're doing." And I love to see that too. I never noticed I did it until he pointed it out to me. But that's what I love. I mean, I'm just doing what I do, you know?
Yeah.
I don't like to see the guy, like you said, that's mechanical with no emotion. I want to see him playing the part. And if it's super difficult, I don't want him to be like a machine. Like,
I have a friend that's a machine.
I don't know. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
But if you're asking me what I prefer to see,
Yeah.
I rather prefer to see the emotional.
The guy doesn't make
drummer.
any faces. He doesn't even have any eye contact. He's like in his own world, but he's such an amazing drummer that you listen to him and it's kind of like he's doing all these things, he's performing, but like for me, I have to think a little deeper and be like, these are the computations in his head. He's doing the performance in his head. He's not okay. Well, like there's drummers out there who actually have an earpiece in, and with their own voice, if they're playing to a click, with their own voice going, okay, this part's coming up, you have to change this, and they're listening to their own guidance.
That's crazy.
Like, isn't that crazy?
I mean,
but
there's nothing wrong with it. I guess.
But this is happening in this guy's head, and even though he's not showing it, he's just playing it. So it's like, I guess it goes down. I guess it comes down to the, are you listening to music, or you're watching music, or both? I find in our field as audio guys, audio is not enough. Audio is supplemental to video. Our jobs are just to help out the video. Do people listen? Yeah, sure. But your average listener, and we could do a whole thing about this, but
I don't think we should get into this.
yeah,
topic.
yeah. So
We've been talking for so much different aspects.
It's so hard. It's so hard to rope it.
Facial expressions and emotion.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's wrap it up.
Yeah, we'll
Let's
wrap it up. So should we do a little promo to wrap it up? Or how do you want to wrap it up?
Let's just wrap it up. Thank you for watching the first episode of Drummers Debate. Please leave your comments below and tell us what you think. Also, tell us what you think is a good drummer to you and what qualities you look for into a drummer. Thank you for watching. I see you guys next time.